what I want to say is that's I'm so passionate about that message today. Because we need to understand that all of us really can be racist. Each and every one of us. I'm not saying that you are, because the beauty of being here today is seeing the diversity that's in your church home. It was so refreshing to see. Because from way, way back, I've always been told is that we can fix the church and we can fix this country. So, looking at you guys and witnessing your service today made me feel like you're on the right road to do that. So it is a testament to my work, because that's what I dedicated my life to do. The one last thing that I want to say before I answer Celia's question is we have to do it. We have to do it today. I believe in my heart that what we see playing out before us today has absolutely nothing to do with the color of your skin. Now, is that to say that racism isn't alive and well? That's not what I'm saying. We know racism is alive and well. But racism is just another tool used to divide us. That's all it is. What we really are witnessing, I believe, that's playing out is good and evil. It's good and evil. And good and evil comes in all shades and colors. And we all know that. We're so busy picking and choosing who we want to play with, live next door to, love, be friends with. We're so busy doing that we're not paying attention to the real issue. Even though we see it every day. It's good and evil. Not one of us in this room has the luxury of thinking that you can only trust somebody that looks like you. Don't be fooled by that. Good and evil comes in all shades and colors. We see it and we witness it every day. Evil goes into our churches, our schools, universities, hospitals, malls. All evil wants. Evil isn't prejudice. Evil doesn't care what you look like. Evil just wants you to open up and let it in. And then you become the tool used to do its dirty work. And we see that every day. Doesn't care what age you are. It's taking away our babies in schools. I met lots of educators today. You educators are first responders. You are the first responders. You're not just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. You are shielding our babies. And we lose lots of educators. Because you are the ones shielding them and protecting them. And even being asked to carry your own weapons in a classroom. How can you actually think that what we're dealing with has something to do with the color of your skin? It's good and evil. And if we don't stop picking and choosing, we're going to lose this fight. And I wanted you to hear that and understand that, because that is the message. That we have to come together. And your congregation is a testament to that. This is the way every church should be. If we don't come together and start seeing the bigger picture, we're going to lose more babies. We're gonna lose more of us. And I'm not just speaking to you as the Ruby Bridges that you think you know. See, I am a mother, I'm a grandmother, and my oldest son was murdered. By somebody that looked exactly like him. He even walked up to them and shook their hand and turned his back. And evil stood over him and shot and murdered him. He thought it was a brother because it looked like him. But it was evil cloaked as his brother. Now, I don't have to tell you this because you see it. You live it and you know it. The good news, because I'm not going to leave without giving you some good news. The good news is, that's all good wants. It's for you to open up and let it in. So that good can use you to do its work. And that is the message that I carry with me across this country today, because even though I was doing this work with our babies, young people, after losing my son, I realized how much more important my message was. Yes. So that we all take the blinders off, begin to see what's really going on. We have to come together to save these babies. We have to understand and realize it has nothing to do with the color of our skin. We're in a much bigger fight today. Much bigger. Even though I was standing out in front of that school and I witnessed what I witnessed, some of the things that I witnessed today, I would have never even dreamed or fathomed that it could happen. So I say to you that it is a pleasure and an honor for me to be here and witness your service today and be amongst your membership, because it reminds me that the work that I'm doing is making a difference. I appreciate seeing that. I do hope in my heart it's genuine and that you continue to work at it, because good needs each and every one of us. Because evil is winning. We're losing too many of our young people, by young people, that have opened themselves up to the evil. Now, normally this is not a message that you would probably see me give, but I am in a church.
All right.
Amen.
All right, come on, y'all.
And this is the message that you need to hear.
So Ruby, I want to stop you there for a second, because there's a lot of people in this church who've had similar experiences that you just touched on. And, you know, even I just,
You need to speak up.
I'm sorry. So there's a lot of people in this church who've had similar experiences to what Ruby touched on in her personal life. And I wanted her to talk for a minute about, we've spoken over the last 24 hours and while we've known each other, about life is all about what you make of in that moment. It's about either stepping in or stepping out when you have an opportunity in front of you. What would you say, how have you dealt with things like your son Craig's death? Like how have you been able to channel that in the work that you do, not only speaking out about the violence here and now, but in your day-to-day life?
Well, you know, that I was raised in a family where, you know, all we had was our faith. My parents were born and raised in a little tiny town in Mississippi, which is where I was born as well. They were sharecroppers. And, you know, one of the reasons why I was chosen or my parents volunteered to send me was because when it was time for them to get the crops in, that's what they had to do. And being educated was a luxury. I mean, there were just times when, no, you cannot go to school. We have to do this. And so when that opportunity came, when the knock at the door came to them, basically what they said is, you know, would you be willing to send your child to one of these newly integrated schools for the very first time in the city? That it will allow them an opportunity to not only have a better education, but the possibility of going on to college. And I think when my mother heard that, she jumped at that opportunity. Because she remembered the days when she really cried and wanted to go to school and couldn't. And actually, she would always say, I had to, you know, work, that I picked 90 pounds of cotton the day you were born. You know, so yes, I would have rather be in school and being educated than actually be in the fields, but that was not something that they could do. So they said yes, and signed me up to go to the school. But all we had, all they had, and even before them, was their faith. You know, my mom said I had to pray, you know, the whole day, and hope that you came back through that door every day.
That's right.
You know, I would send you, and you know, back then it wasn't like parents could actually go and sit into a classroom. And not to mention that they definitely weren't allowing black parents to do it because they didn't want them there anyway.
Right.
So she said, all I could do was pray. I would pray in the mornings all day long until you walk back to the door. So we only had our faith. And so that was the way that I was raised. And so I believe in my prayers, even though I didn't really understand it. Didn't understand it. It was something that I was told to do. I continued to do it. Said prayers every night before I went to bed. But you know, I also was the kind of child that was always talking to myself or talking to someone, not really knowing what that someone was. But it was a higher power.
Yes, it was. You was talking back there.
So, you know, there came a time when I started hearing answers. You know, so what I didn't realize is that you are talking to somebody, and that they're answering back. And that became very, very evident to me that the Lord was listening to me. And even though it looked like I was alone at times, even though I was escorted by federal marshals, but even looking at that, you figure this little child is really alone. But I was never alone. The Lord was always with me. And I didn't realize it then. I know it now for sure. And I know that I'm not alone today. And I know that the Lord is listening to me today. I believe that the path that I was put on at 6 was my calling. And there came a time in my life when I accepted that calling. Felt like, you know, I want to be able to share my message with other young people. Because, you know, one of the main things is that despite the crowd that was outside screaming and yelling and everything that you all saw, and yes, they were full of hate, but there was a white woman who came from Boston to teach me, who greeted me every day, who escorted me into the classroom, stayed there with me, taught me. She made school so much fun. I knew all I needed to do is get out of the car, walk through that door into the classroom, and I knew I was going to have a great day. She made school fun. I loved school. I knew that I was going to learn something new every day. And I wanted to learn something new.
Tell them what her name is.
Her name was Barbara Henry, or is, because Barbara is still alive. She's still my very best friend. The Lord will put somebody there for you. And I don't think He picks and chooses by what they look like. Or maybe He does. Maybe He wanted Barbara to be white and to be there. Or I wouldn't be sitting here today telling you this message.
Amen.
He knows what He's doing. And, the one thing she taught me was a lesson that she didn't even realize she was teaching. That she showed me her heart. She cared about me. I knew she did. Because your children know when somebody's mistreating them, when somebody's showing them love. And I was the same way. She showed me her heart. And yet I knew she looked exactly like those people outside. So I really wasn't sure how to accept that in the beginning. But by her showing me her heart, I knew that I could trust her. She made me want to go to school. I never missed a day that whole year. And she never missed a day. It was just her and I. So the lesson she really taught me by showing me her heart is the exact same lesson I believe that Dr. King tried to teach all of us. That you can never look at a person and judge them by the color of their skin. That we have to allow ourselves an opportunity to judge each other by the content of our character. That is the lesson I believe I went into that classroom to learn, that Barbara taught me by showing me her heart, and that is the exact same lesson that I am passing on to you today. Please do not be fooled by what we hear and see. Take your blinders off and see it for what it is.
And you're writing a book about your relationship with God.
My next book to come out is really a talk with my teacher. It is the first conversation that I had with her after I met her again 35 years later. Wow. Because after she taught me, she left and I never saw her again for 30 years. Wow. And then finally her and I were reunited on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Wow. That's where I met her again as an adult, and this next book is a part of that conversation. Wow. But again, I'm going to let Seal have one more question.
Well, Barbara Henry was one of the main topics I wanted to talk about, so I'm glad you spoke about that. And also, do people realize that Ruby was the only child in that year in school?
Yes, and so a little bit about that is that, Brown versus Board, it happened in 1954, we all knew that, but the loophole for Brown versus the Board is to do it with all deliberate speed. Remember that? Well, all deliberate speed for me and someone else is totally different. That was the loophole. That gave them the opportunity to say, we'll get around to it. And so the NAACP came in and forced that in each state. And so in 1957, the Little Rock 9 integrated high school, if you remember that. That was in Arkansas. So that was in 57. For me, Louisiana, evidently, they were not rushing to get it done. So that didn't happen until 1960, which is for elementary school, and that's when I went into elementary school. But there were only 2 schools chosen in the entire city, New Orleans, and they made sure that those 2 schools were located in some of the most racist parts of town because they did not want it to pass. They made everybody take a test, and I say everybody because my parents were not the only ones who signed their kids up. There were 150 families with 6-year-old kids who signed their kids up to go. But again, there was a test implemented that said that basically we all needed to be tested to make sure that we were smart enough to go into these new schools. When indeed, the test was set up to eliminate kids. So out of that 150 kids, only 6 of them passed. And I always take great pride in saying that all 6 were girls. Sorry, guys. It's written news history. They were all girls, and those 6 girls were divided up, and 3 assigned to one school and 3 to the other. But by the time the first day came, 2 parents decided not to send their kids, and those 2 kids were assigned to go to school with me. So that is how I ended up in one school alone in one part of town, and 3 other girls went to a second school. The difference basically was that those 3 had each other. They went through probably worse than I did, my understanding. But for me, again, that's why I believe in faith, that they were being taught by teachers who really did not want to teach them. So their story, their experience is different from mine. Barbara was sent there to teach me. And I believe in my heart it was because of, again, the message that I was going to carry with me. So, what everybody saw was this lone child in a school alone for an entire year with one teacher, because the day I walked in, everybody else walked out. Over 500 kids were taken out of school and they never came back that entire year. So that is the gist of my story. Most of my books talk about that experience and what it was like in more detail. How I wasn't able to have recess or eat lunch in the cafeteria, didn't have anybody to really talk to, you know, those sorts of things. But all in all, back to Seal and answer his question. What carries me today really is my faith. You know, the thing about it is, if you are fortunate enough, and I think we all are, because we all can do it, if you're fortunate enough to figure out what your calling is, and you accept it, there is no turning back. That's right. You've made that commitment, and he's going to hold you to it. And when he can no longer use you to do that work, I think your work is over. So I've made that commitment, and I'm going to follow through with it.
What was the catalyst? What took you from having had this experience as a child, growing up? You said publicly before you weren't aware of the Norman Rockwell painting, the problem we all live with, which I know you all are familiar with. You didn't know that till you were in your late teenager?
I was probably 16 or 17 before I actually saw it, even though it was done in 1964. I think Norman Rockwell had been working on it for a number of years before that, but it was published in 1964. You have to also understand that back then we didn't have Black History Month. So basically for me as a 6-year-old, once that happened, it was over. You know, the next year when I went back to second grade, schools were pretty much being integrated across the city. So that part of my journey and my work was over, so nobody really talked about it. I had lots of questions, and I thought, well, the minute I go back to school, then all of my questions are going to be answered when we study history. You know, my question about, well, why me? How was I chosen? That all those questions I was going to learn the minute I opened my history book. That's what I thought. And there were no answers. It's just me and all my questions. And so you have to understand that, fast forward, 16 or 17, when I saw the Norman Rockwell painting, you know, up until that moment, I thought it was an incident that happened on my street. mean, I was 6. It wasn't like I ventured outside of my community or my neighborhood. So I thought it was just something that happened on my street. And then it was over. I had no idea that it was a part of a much bigger movement all across the country. How was I to know that? My parents were not educated. The only way I would have learned that is actually going to school and opening up my history book. That was not the case. So seeing the Norman Rockwell painting for the very first time, you know, a reporter said, "Do you know that this is you?" Now I know it looked like me. And I remember the incident, but I was not aware of the painting. But when he told me that, it helped me to understand and realize who I was, and that this wasn't just something that happened on my street. But this was something that changed the face of education in the country.
Yes.
And that I was somebody.
Yes.
I just needed to go out and find that somebody and be reunited with that person and the work that I had been called to do. So I guess to sum it up, all of us are needed. All of you really have a calling. Each and every one of you come into the world with a purpose. Some of us are lucky enough to find out what it is before we leave here. But I do believe that if you ask, it'll be shown to you. Because you are needed. And you're definitely needed right now today. So, I appreciate, again, being able to come and visit your church. These are brothers of mine. You know, I also have learned over the years that family is not just the family you're born into. That the Lord will put people in place to wrap their arms around you and help you along your journey. And I believe that these 2 brothers of mine have done that today. So I just want to say thank you for opening up your arms and welcoming me. Such a very warm welcome. Delicious food.
Oh, yeah.
And oh my God. I know that some of you will already understand this. My taste buds have had a whole new awakening to ice cream. I will never be able to go back and get regular ice cream again in my life. I have been spoiled it was just absolutely amazing. So again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.